Everyone, welcome back to the only podcast that not only shares the bodybuilding news with you, but teaches you how to build a better body. Serve straight with Papi and Sky. First, before we get started, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this podcast with everyone so that way we can get good information out there. I'm your host, Ian, aka Anabolic Papi, and as always, I got my favorite co-host with me, Skylar Matthews. Sky, how we doing today?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. I'm excited for today's topic, to be honest. I want to learn a little bit about bodybuilding, dog.
Good. Well, I'm glad you brought up exactly what that's going to be. So this past weekend and 2 weekends prior, we had two really big bodybuilding events. We'll start with the first one, the Pittsburgh Pro, which is a competition in itself. But within it, they have a guest posing where the top athletes and competitors in all the divisions, they usually get them together. It doesn't necessarily mean the best competitors, but also the most popular. They get them on stage regardless of the condition they're in, and they usually try to get in a little bit better condition than normal to step on that stage. And it's just a chance for people to get a preview, a little bit of hype. Gotcha. This past weekend was a New York Pro, a little bit more of a prolific show back in the day. It's still one of the top pro shows. But there was a lot of hype coming out of the Pittsburgh guest posing into this because of the top two competitors who finished at this show. So we'll dive into the Pittsburgh Pro. I'll give just some entry level things so people can understand what the hype is about, who's who, and then we'll actually dissect people's physique and kind of talk about some strengths, weaknesses, and compare them to each other. Then we'll dive right into the New York Pro, and that'll give us a really good idea now that we have that background on what to look forward to in the future. How's that sound?
Okay. I mean, honestly, it sounds good, especially with your boy about to compete soon. You know what I mean? So
we are all excited for that, finally.
I'm more nervous than anything.
You don't have to, dude. It's all you versus you. I always tell people who compete, there's nothing you can do about it. It's not like a sports game or sports or like soccer or football where you are trying to beat other people, but all the work is done before you step on stage. It's not like you're actively, except for the posing piece and, being a little bit more confident, but essentially 99% of the work is done prior. And that's really where it doesn't matter what the other people are doing. It's just focused on you. So it's a weird dynamic. So exactly what you're saying, for sure. it's just you versus you.
Yeah. I think one thing I'm pretty happy about is like, I'm 30, bro. And I've been lifting for like 12 years. So like, I have skin in the game. Like I'm not just like I didn't just like start lifting and like acquire a decent physique and I'm like, okay, let's hop on stage. Not to say that I didn't think about it back in the day for sure.
Oh, I know I was there. You dabbled with it, yeah.
But this time, I mean, that's 12 years of lifting, bro.
I know, and
I'm excited. It's
good for you too because what opened my eyes from competing is, so I didn't really even know what bodybuilding was till I started competing. I knew it kind of, but I didn't really know how big the world was. Even after my first or second competition, I didn't really know. It's great because, most people, their goal for their physique is I want to lose weight or I want to look good for summer or whatever. When you bodybuild and you get into that shape and you compare yourself to other physiques, and if you have a little bit more of a competitive mindset, you're like, oh, I have a more lofty, more aggressive goal, but also more accurate and precise goal, right? I need to bring this muscle up. I need to be more conditioned, whatever. So I think you'll really enjoy it. The process is tough and it really brings the most out of people. So, I know, my first competition, my first two, actually, I wasn't in great shape. And then you really start to see, okay, this is what it requires. So,
but you did that thing. But you did that thing.
Oh yeah. And now I'm addicted. Yeah. So.
For sure. Well, question about that. So like whenever you started, what was like your thought process going into the show? Like, were you one of those people who were like going in to get, I guess, like going with the intention of gaining experience only, or did you expect to like win?
That's a good question. I think because I'd never been on a stage before, I'd been lifting, since I was 12 years old. And at this point, I think I was 27 or 6. I can't remember. So it'd been almost 15 years, and I'd always been around. I'd always been the more fit person, especially with my job and everything. So, I'd always thought like, oh, I'm big. I think I'm good. I didn't necessarily think, oh, I'm going to sweep this show because it was my first show, but I felt pretty confident that I was going to do really well. And it was a great experience that I got. I mean, I still placed second in novice, and then I got first call to open. It was Texas Cup 2017. It was over 1,000 competitors, which is a giant show. But it was good to see that and get that exposure. But it's actually funny because I saw DJ compete, or I don't know if he just competed or he competed before he talked about it. That's why I did men's physique for the first show. I didn't know that there was anything else. And then that's kind of what it was. So I was like, okay, well, if DJ can do it and he can win, or he got second. I think he won his first show, whatever. I was like, oh, I could probably do pretty decent.
I actually coached him for that show.
Yeah, I mean, he looked great. That was the only, and then he did the Corpus show, and that was it, right? I think just those two. Yeah. So, I mean, dude, that's pretty good. I mean, for you prepping him, especially that early in your career, he looked pretty damn good. So,
well, genetics and hard work.
And that would be a great topic for us to talk about. Also, bodybuilding genetics and the hard work aspect. They're great, and we'll actually show you. Nick Walker is going to be a great example of. He does have great genetics. I'm more talking about the structure and the lines. But his work ethic is beyond. Versus you'll see someone else, Derek Lunsford, who's I would say on the opposite, has the amazing structure genetics. He does obviously work hard. He's Mr. Olympia currently. But he don't work. So
I am familiar with Nick Walker 100%. Especially as someone who is stickler for form, like me being like this is a jacked dude who's top Olympian who has impeccable form on a lot of things. So like when people say, well, like he's more jacked than you, why are you critiquing this guy's form? I'm like, well, I mean, Nick Walker's more jacked than most of us. So like and
isn't that crazy though, dude? That's what's insane to me is like you can have, Branch Warnock was a very popular person in this kind of training, like the very like just brute ego, Sam Solik training. Ronnie Coleman essentially was, but then you have guys like Nick Walker, the complete opposite, and they both end up with amazing physiques. It's like it's just crazy to me. I don't think anybody can be like, this is the right way or the wrong way. But for you and I think we're a little bit more on that page. We like, I don't think Nick is ever going to get injured doing that. He actually got injured before the Olympia last year, but I think he was walking down the stairs or something, or he tripped.
He's too jacked, bro. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, I'm down. Let's look at this.
Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to bring up that video and then bring us all the way directly over to where they're all out on stage. Okay.
Massive, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, we're not getting audio in here. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to. Oh, there we go. So this guy at the end is classic physique, and this guy's classic physique. Those are more the smaller weight capped divisions, and then these guys are all open bodybuilders. And so what they're doing now is they're just playing around. They're moving them how they would at an actual show, just creating a little bit of hype.
Yeah.
But essentially, as you can see here, there's different conditioning. Some guys look a little bit more in off season. Some guys are actually off cycle. Some guys are just more fluffy. Some guys, is usually really lean or had just competed. So just based off of that right there, who impresses you the most? I know it's really quick, but there's anyone, and that's what's great is like just the flash. Who just sticks out to you the most?
Well, bro, I mean, they all look freaking insane. First off, like Nick Walker, I might be a little biased with that mention, but the two that you mentioned, the classic physique guys at the end,
Ramon and Urs. And why would you say that?
Ramon, bro. It's funny video about Marone. There's a kid who went to take a picture or a video with Ramon. And
the one where he kisses. Was he kissing?
No. He's a little chubby kid, right? And
yeah.
Bro, so he takes off his shirt, and then Ramon's like, "Whoa, my bad, bro, my bad." And then they take a picture, and right at the end, bro, Ramon squeezes his nipple. So freaking funny, man. It's so funny.
Yeah, so I'm gonna bring up the NPC photos, pose by pose, and we'll kind of break it down, and this will kind of help us with the New York Pro portion of it. So I'm going to bring up the front double bicep. Okay, this is generally the pose from the front that's the most important because it exposes all your strengths and weaknesses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because you're pretty much just open kimono.
I know, man. I hear a lot that those shows are won from the back, bro.
Yes, yeah.
I'm sure we'll go into that for sure.
Yeah. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. little bit unclear here, but as you can see, so like I said, everyone's in different kind of conditions. So what are we really, like, the bodybuilding community? What were we really looking for? So Derek Lunsford here, right in the middle. He won the Mr. Olympia last year.
Mhm.
Nick Walker got third 2 years ago. He got injured last year, and this guy Samson Dauda got third last year. Okay. Hunter was a top 6, I think, last year, and then he also got fourth a couple years ago. He's kind of like Hunter Labrada's dad. Lee Labrada is very popular. He has right back here the Labrada Nutrition. That's his company. So people kind of say he has a chip on his shoulder. He kind of is popular because of his name, but he's a great bodybuilder. So these two right here. So you got Nick and you got Martin Fitzwater. Martin Fitzwater took some time off. Nobody really saw him up compared to anybody prior to this Pittsburgh Pro. He just looked really good. And one thing with bodybuilding, I mean, this is good for anybody, especially when it comes to social media, is you don't really know how good somebody looks until they're next to somebody. So someone might look amazing, right, on social media with all the filters and all that, and then you'll be very underwhelmed once you see them next to somebody. This guy, Andrew Jack, I think he was 5th. And then he was a top 3, I think, of the Arnold Classic this year. He's one of the up and comers. And then you have Urs and you have Ramon. So the biggest hype was like, okay, Derek Lunsford last year was just a freak when he came out for the guest posing. Samson's been a big hype, but he kind of fell off a little bit on the popularity, had some outbursts. And then Nick versus Martin, because as we'll see in the New York Pro, these were the top 2 guys.
Gotcha. So how tall is Nick Walker and Buddy in the middle?
And Derek Lunsford. So I think, I want to say, I've met both of them in person. I have pictures with them. I want to say Derek, could be 5'3", somewhere right there. Maybe 5'4". Nick would be maybe 5'5", 5'6". Martin the same. Samson's, I think, 5'10", 5'11", and Andrew's 6 feet. Pretty sure that's right around.
That is crazy. Yeah.
And so Nick on stage, I think, weighs around 270 plus or minus. Derek around 240. Samson around, I think, 290. Hunter's weighing about 300 right now in his off season. And then these guys.
What do you think is holding back Samson from being center stage? Because I mean, in hindsight, obviously, like wouldn't a taller physique fill out more and be more proportional overall, like, compared to the shorter individual? It's actually really good you brought that up, because we might touch on the pits in the New York Pro breakdown, but there's a competitor or a pro named Quentin Beastwood. He's very tall. I think 6'2". Just like you're saying, it takes years. Like 10 pounds of muscle on me. I'm 5'10" and a half. You're what, 6'2"? 6'3".
6'3". 10 pounds of muscle on me is not the same as you. 10 pounds on me is probably like 15 to 17 for you, 20 maybe. So yeah, exactly what you're saying. But Samson, he's pretty filled out. His issue has been conditioning. And this picture doesn't really do well. He does get lean, and some people talk about, okay, genetics, right? The African-American competitors, or these guys aren't even African-American. They're both from Nigeria, I believe. I know Andrew Jack is, and Samson, I think he lives in the UK. He's a Nigerian lion. So they tend to say that they hold a little bit more water. It's harder for them to get really grainy, shredded glutes. I'm not saying none of them can. I'm just saying generally in the bodybuilding community, that's what they say. Like, just different races, just, we are different in the sense that we're built, have different things. So that's what people have said. But then there are athletes like Quentin Beastwood or Quentin Araya, who is black, and the guy that we were just talking about, he gets shredded. And he was actually saying, like, oh, it's not true us black guys can't get really shredded. You just got effort. So that's been Samson's thing. He's always been critiqued about how hard he really goes in the prep. And then there's some backstory about, like, he had a very famous coach, but his wife, who's a pro, was coaching him behind the scenes. It's all really intricate, man. And there's a lot that goes behind it because it's a sport. But at the end of the day, so to the average eye, though, I'm curious I like that question. Like, what else kind of sticks out to you? And I can bring up other poses too, if you want.
Bro, the waist. Yeah. The waist of, like, Ramon and Urs is insanely small compared to the rest of the competitors, I guess, outside of Samson. Like, I mean, but
this is Samson.
Yeah. Outside of Samson, like, their waist is pretty freaking small, dude.
Yeah. And that's been Nick's biggest critique, Is it? I don't know. Do you ever hear the name Blessing Iwodabu? He's a bodybuilder, but he was big in YouTube too. He's like the big giant black guy who make funny videos of
Oh,
like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
walking.
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So he would
Yeah.
call Nick a fridge or refrigerator because he just got a refrigerator body because of his waist. So his biggest issue, and I'll show you some other poses, but his quad sweeps are very narrow, and I have theories as to why that is. Very wide waist, and then he really has to build up his lats and delts to make up for that. Versus like look at Derek Lunsford. You know, it's just X frame, boom, boom. Yeah.
Well, moving his so wider stance. So next to Derek, who's on the other side of Derek,
Martin, right here.
Martin. So like, look at Martin's legs though. Like Martin's legs are slightly wider. Wider placed, I guess you could say, than like Nick's. You don't think like having Nick Walker like just shift his legs out better? Granted, of course, he should build more muscle. Of course, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't think posing it in a similar way to this gentleman would be beneficial for Nick, or do you think that'll take away?
Very good question. Posing is just, I think posing is one of the most underrated things in bodybuilding because it allows you to mask your weaknesses, accentuate your strengths. So, you know, and that's where you'll see in bodybuilding versus classic. So if you see, you know, Ramon and Urs hit these a little different, right? They're more weight on one leg, have one leg up, kind of like Martin is. The way Derek Lunsford and Nick Walker and Hunter Labrada and even Andrew Jack hit it, even though Andrew Jack usually hits it a little different, is a little bit more classic. So there is differences. I would say that space is the enemy of posing in bodybuilding too, because space means that you haven't filled that up, right? So Nick has had to do in order to make his legs look bigger is build up his adductors a lot, right? Because if he didn't have these adductors, his legs would look so narrow because he doesn't have these sweeps. All these guys have great adductors, but you could just see on top of the knee that vastus lateralis, that quad sweep is just bulging. And that's what you want because you want to create that X frame, right? So wide lats and wide quads and then tight waist. So I'm going to bring up another picture for you while we do that. This will be you're going to like this one. Yeah, we'll do side chest and then we'll do a back and then we can kind of cut it from there. All right. But yeah, very good questions. I mean, it's exactly what you're saying is what's very important to point out.
It's crazy, man. They look insane. To know that Nick is like freaking 270 right there, like that's at 5'5" is crazy.
And Big Ramy, I mean, he's been around 300 pounds on stage.
Like, bro, I'm 240 at 6'3". Like he weighs more than me at like almost a foot shorter. Like that's insane.
Yeah, see, I pulled this up. It's the same gallery, but let me see here. JC, you can cut the scrolling out. Let me bring this up. Let me just bring this because I screenshotted each picture, but it was all the same link.
Yeah, it's all good. Uh-oh. Ian, did you freeze or what?
No, we're good. No, we're good.
You were just focused.
Okay, here we go. All right, JC, you can start rolling it here. Okay. So this is actually better.
Yeah, dude.
This is way very clear. So this is a side chest pose. Ramon's not really in it. Ramon's, there we go. Now that's a lot better.
Yeah, zoom that in though. Zoom that in.
Okay, I think we get a max there.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, as you can see, you know, the strengths are going to be different, right? So the waist is less of a factor here because you're on the side, like you said. But here, what you're really looking for is I always say big, little, big, right? So big, wide shoulders, thick chest and arms, no space on top. You want to keep your waist a little bit more thin. So these classic guys, I wouldn't normally say that they're going to have their hands a little bit higher up on their up in their sternum. They can hit it how they feel, and then you obviously want to have a big side leg. But this is again another complete variation where some guys look better than others, regardless of their conditioning, based off where they're at.
Yeah, bro. I mean, if I were to put who I think looks the best has the best side chest, it's the second black guy, not Samson, the other guy.
Andrew.
Andrew, bro, look how symmetrical that looks. Shoulder to shoulder, chest, massive legs. Granted, obviously he could be leaner, but again, this is guest posing.
Yeah.
Like he looks the best, bro.
Yeah. And
yeah.
It's another crazy fact. So Derek Lunsford came from the 212 division. So it's bodybuilding, but their weight cap is 212 and usually 212 pounds. So usually the shorter guys will do that. The year after, he went to open bodybuilding. He got second place in the Mr. Olympia. So he won the Mr. Olympia in 212. Next year, he went to the open. He got second behind Hadi. And then this next year that just passed, he won. So this guy was capped at 212 pounds going up against 270, 290-pound monsters. And now, look, that's why I'm saying he's so freaky. He looks bigger than Nick Walker here. I mean, Nick's obviously in a little bit better shape, but look at how wide he is compared to these guys. I know there's angles and whatever, but that's why, Derek Lunsford was considered so hyped, because he just looks insane for his size or his height.
So you're saying right here he's 212?
No, he competed at 212 2 years ago. That was his division.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is, like, regardless of how much steroids you're taking, what your diet's like and how much training, like, can you put on 50 pounds of muscles in 2 years? More than likely not. So coming from 212, he's weighing about, I would say 230, 235 on stage max. Given his height, he just looks massive compared to these guys that are 40 pounds bigger than him.
Even compared to the guy that I think looked the best, like
compared to him.
Compared to him, his chest and shoulders look huge, bro.
Yeah.
Like they look huge, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And another side note here is, again, the Pittsburgh Pro, the show itself is run by Jim Mannion, who's a big part of the IFBB or the Mr. Olympia. So this is kind of the first look, also kind of like for lack of a better term, brown nosing or kind of sucking up to the boss before the show, right? There was some controversy a couple years where Big Ramy, a year after he won his second Mr. Olympia, didn't show up to this for personal reasons, and he didn't say why he didn't show up, and that's why he went from winning 1 year to all the way down to sixth. They say, and they kind of punished him for him. That's why this is such a big deal. This is kind of like, okay, the big bosses who own the company, this is what they put on. Like, you're gonna show up, and that's why they get these people there. So
yeah. I mean, how political do you think this is? Do you think it's major?
Luckily I'm an amateur, so I'm sure when I become a pro, I probably gotta watch my mouth, because if you can't tell, that's my answer is somewhat. The thing is with bodybuilding, it's completely subjective, right? There are criteria, but it's all subjective. And, sure, you're not going to have some guy who's, obese and never touched a weight before beat, the most conditioned bodybuilder, right? Because he likes someone or doesn't like somebody. Yeah, it's all subjective. There's no, it's not like, even sports has a little subjectivity in it.
For sure.
But I would argue it does. And from my conversations with people in the space is, as a pro, it's a business at the end of the day. And bodybuilding is very small. Things are very easy to manipulate when they're small. As it gets bigger, there's more exposure. It might be harder to do that sort of stuff. But, that's why they've been saying recently, like, that's why they promote some athletes more than others, right? Chris Bumstead is such a great. So that's why even though Chris Bumstead has a remarkable physique, definitely deserves to win number one, but there is something about him being such a great ambassador, having a great following. So a lot of people argue that's why Ramon Dino came up and these other Brazilian bodybuilders, because they've been trying to break into the Brazilian market. Big Ramy was the Egyptian market, Hadi's the Iranian market. So it's just something to consider. So long answer to your short question, is it political? I would argue yes. I would argue it is easy to influence. Do you see that, or do you hear that from your end? Besides people bitching and complaining.
See, the only person I've heard talk in depth about it is Bradley Martin. And he talked about when he was like coming up, like he got invited to a show, and I guess like the promoter or like one of the owners of the show or one of the people putting on the show he never disclosed who that was exactly.
Right.
But told him, yo, if you show up to this show, you will win. I need you here at the show type of thing. So ever since seeing that, I mean, obviously I kind of knew. I do know like it's subjective. I think that once you reach higher levels, so many people look so much the same until there's like little outliers, right?
Yeah.
That your own biases do have to play a role. So like in my want to compete, I know it's competing naturally versus like enhanced. I do understand that there is that subjectivity. So I think based on like your point, like it is important to like make sure that you're doing this for you and that you're doing this. Like, of course, it is important to take judges' feedback if you want to take the sport seriously. Of course, like I get that. And not every judge is malicious enough to be like, yo, dude, I mean, you know what I mean? Like that's they're not objectively just malicious to you for no reason. So I think leaning into the fact that this is a sport that you need to do for yourself comes at the forefront before any of that. And you got to play, you got to deal with the cards that you're dealt at that point, it's work ethic and stuff like that.
It's a very good point. And it's bodybuilding at the end of the day, like you're going to get criticized. So actually a little bit more insight I'll give you, and I'll kind of give you a basic rundown of what I think at what level. So at the amateur level, it's not so political because you also got to think. So there's different organizations. There's an MPC, which is amateur level, IFBB, which is pro. They have different committees, different owners, right? Each show has its own promoter. So the IFBB or MPC can have what they want, but the show promoter who hires these judges, which are usually MPC or IFBB judges, also has some influence. Second, a lot of these amateur shows, for instance, Texas and California being some of the bigger bodybuilding states, there are coaching businesses, coaches who advertise their coaching or buy booths, which gives that promotion money, right? So I would say that they're going to be a little bit more biased to give those athletes a little bit more of a look. And again, I'm not saying it for sure happens or doesn't. I'm just saying that it's very possible, especially with such a small organization, for there to be some influence when it comes to money, because at the end of the day, that's what this is about. So
I guess it is hard. It is hard when you compare it to like sprinting, like you have a definite, like you have a time, you did your time, and is this time better than that time? Like, but like there's not necessarily that here that
and then like I said, there's divisions like men's physique and bikini. I would argue they really don't know what the hell they're looking for. You could literally at the Olympia, all top 10 could have won those shows. And they change, right? They adjust the winner of the Olympia and these shows to shift the focus of what they want the criteria to be. So one year they might just want a freak. They just want freaks to win, right? Just monsters like Nick. And then, like Big Ramy, for instance. And then you have a more aesthetic guy like Hadi or Derek come in. And I mean, Ramy could be bigger and more conditioned, but these guys their structure is more appealing, and that's the direction they want to go. So they're going to win. Yeah. So, all right. I know you've been waiting to see the backs. So let's go ahead.
I want to see the back pose, bro. I've been praised about my back, man.
And I mean, I
can't even see it, but like I've been praised about it. Respect.
And I would also agree with you that the back is what wins the shows. Because it's one of those things where it's the hardest. You can't see it. So, it's really like, okay, at the amateur level, most guys are going to have a poor back. It's just at the pro levels when you really build that up. It's harder to build that mind muscle connection, train it right. But again, it is a little genetic. I would argue a lot of people talk about genetics. Like if you see Hunter Labrada, let me bring this up. Sorry, guys. So Hunter Labrada, for instance.
Oh my God.
He's missing his lower lats. Everyone's like, oh, it's genetics. Same thing with Big Ramy. Same things with Ian Bayer. When you see how they train, how do you think they train when they do the lat pull downs? Right? There's no lengthening and shortening of the muscle as through full range of motion versus if you look at Derek train, you look at Nick train, you look at these guys, they're training exactly how you and I like. So yes, there is genetics involved in how that muscle shapes and where it originates and inserts. But I would argue when you train a certain way. And another thing, this lower back, for Ian Bayer and Big Ramy, they do a lot of heavy bent hip hinge movements and stuff like that. The spinal rectors, I believe, overlap the lats, if I'm not mistaken, in the anatomy, and that starts to tighten, build muscle on top. So it's going to constrict, it's going to kind of wrap around those lats a little bit more to make it harder to show. There's muscle there and it's tight. But again, those are just all little things. That's why bodybuilders, they don't do so much super heavy barbell squatting or deadlifting and these powerlifting movements because it starts to build that waist and that trunk and also starts to create imbalances of that.
So what do you think? Obviously, you need to be overall. What is more important, the width or like the thickness, bro? What do you think?
Yeah. So again, subjective, excuse me, I would say both. But it's a very good point, because then you have detail too. You can have a very thick back, very, very thick. Like if you look at Derek, I mean, he's not in contest shape, but it's not as like impressive as somebody like Martin, who's going to be a little bit bigger, or Nick, who has a little bit more detail, right? So, but you got to, like, Samson has always been criticized for his back. He just does not have a big back to his whole frame. If you look at it, it kind of looks like an amateur's back, right? So it's in relation to the whole frame, And then don't forget the back double bicep. You're judging the lower body as well. Nick has the craziest freaking hamstrings. He always comes in hot. So it's just things to consider. Urs in the classic physique realm has a very smaller back, which is, again, I always talk about the more narrow your clavicles, the smaller your back double, but for sure the smaller your back lat spread is going to look.
But that V taper though.
Yes, and that's a big piece.
Bro, freaking, what is his name? Starts with R on the far right.
Ramon.
Bro, I need to you're gonna make me do some serious research on these people, bro. So
I was about to say, do you like him the most? Is that your favorite?
I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, I think I just have the wholesome moment of him pinching a titty, but and it's just so funny. And I went through the comments because I didn't really. I mean, obviously, I'd seen him compete against Chris Bumstead, and I've seen a couple of viral posts of him showing gratitude to freaking Arnold. So his energy is just funny. But when I saw that, I mean, it's just burned into my brain. Everyone thought it was funny. I'm like, damn, this guy must be pretty chill. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you'll come to find. I mean, you're obviously in the fitness space, so I think that bodybuilders are a lot more introverted. They're a little bit more shyer. So when you see someone that's a little bit relatable, like Urs, he's a breakdancer, or he used to be a breakdancer. And you see it in his
shout out to Urs, hey bro. Yeah. Shout out to B-Boy Thesis, man. Hey, he was my coach. I shit you not, man. I hired a breakdancing coach to help me move better, bro. I swear, it was fun. We spent probably 3 or 4 months together. We would do virtual. I had the phone in the studio, and then I made sure no one was in the studio, and it was just me and him, and he was running me through drills.
Hell yeah,
that's what's up.
That Arnold and I believe it was Frank Palumbo, excuse me. Is it Frank? God. Anyway, those guys hired ballerina teachers to help with their posing.
That's what's up.
And you're right. Posing, you can really tell someone's flexibility, mobility, and all that sort of stuff in the posing. And so you want to be very loose with it. But back to Ramon. So another thing within the bodybuilding sphere that's kind of interesting is the Brazilian fans are fucking nuts. I've never been to Brazil. I've been to Argentina. I don't know. They're very different. But they die hard for Ramon. So, even sending death threats. Rafael Brando's another big open bodybuilder who competes. They go as far as, trashing your page. Samson's gotten, death threats and stuff like that from the Brazilian fans.
That's crazy.
So
that is crazy.
So that's pretty much the breakdown of the Pittsburgh guest posing. Do you have any questions or anything you want to add? I mean, at the end of the day, it's just, the top of the top and building hype for the Olympia, which
I mean, what's crazy to me is how different these individuals look to each other. You would in most sports, you would assume the outliers would eventually be fairly similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As similar as you would expect people to be, there's a lot of diversity within the top of the top, at least here. Ramon looks different from Urs, who looks different from Chris Bumstead. Those are 3 different physiques who have made it to the top in their own way. You know what I mean? So it's pretty crazy, bro.
And as you bring that up, actually, I just wanted to show you this to preface. So remember, I told you there was a little drama between Nick Walker and Martin, not drama against each other, but because of this guest posing. So Nick has always had a lot of trouble with his waist, okay? Just how big it is. And so I'm going to bring this up here. This is a picture. He's not fully set up in the front double yet, but this was a guest posing. This wasn't a competition. He didn't come in 100% peaked. His gut was really distended, and they actually deleted the pictures in here. Or they didn't put them up of him doing his side transitions, going in between poses. But he really let his gut go. This isn't really even that bad. But that was a big critique. People were like, oh, Nick's off. He's competing next week because he's competing at the New York Pro. Martin looks so good. And I think what happened is they actually peaked Martin for this show or for this guest posing, or maybe had to keep a little tighter. And Nick, they just kept business as usual. So people are like, oh shit, we haven't seen Nick a year and a half. Nick is supposed to be the top 3 bodybuilder in the world, and this dude Martin is going to blow him in the water, blow him out of the water. And that was a big thing. And you know, we'll talk about Matt Jansen in a later episode. That's Nick's coach. Went out there and was like, look, like, you guys don't know bodybuilding. If you guys knew bodybuilding, why the hell would I pique him for this? Why the hell would I care as much of a guest posing, which doesn't get him to the Olympia versus an actual show? So that's just a preface of it. People were really hyped, and I knew what kind of was going on, and I was like, they're not going to pique him for this. Like, he's got a show that he needs to win. But you know, the general public would look at Nick Walker on the stage, look at Martin Fitzwater, and be like, oh shit, Nick's going to lose.
Yeah.
So there's a little preview. All right, so we'll jump into this. New York Pro prejudging. Shout out to Nick Strength and Power for letting us use his video. Just kidding, we stole it. I will say Nick Strength and Power, just for your knowledge, I don't know if you heard of him. He is one of the first bodybuilding outlets. I don't actually like his content. I don't know that he's even competed. I think he competed as an amateur before, but he has one of the largest pages for bodybuilding news, but his takes are very poor. He doesn't have a lot of bodybuilding actual fitness knowledge, so he brings his takes into these videos, and it's kind of just, I don't know, as a bodybuilder, it's kind of a little cringy.
Yeah. I'm gonna be looking at his stuff for here in a bit.
Yeah, so I'll give you some better guys. Ivan Bodybuilding, Yvonne Bodybuilding is a top one. And then there's a couple more I'll give you, but this is going to be the top 6. This is prejudging. So for those people who don't know, you have 2 parts of a show. You have the prejudging and you have the finals. Prejudging is usually in the morning, finals at night, or prejudging for the pros usually is one day before, and then you have the finals a second day. So this is the prejudging. This is the first, and that's all we'll go over because not really much changes from here to the final show. But just to give you a look, and you can see the differences, and I'll kind of just run through this a little bit. And we'll let Nick talk over a little bit. Yeah, so we'll bring this back. So now you see big time, right? Waist difference between Martin and Nick. Pretty much everyone has a smaller waist than Nick, right?
Yeah, that is crazy. But the definition and how symmetrical his abs are is pretty crazy, though. Yes,
and that's where he leaned into his weakness and turned it into a strength. Nobody trains abs like him, so he's like, fuck it. If I'm gonna have this big ass waist, might have some sick ass abs. He has amazing abs, and he crunches in a little bit more. You can go ahead with your point, and I'll sits there like that.
No, yeah, it just looks crazy, bro.
Yeah, and then you have Tonio Burton right here, who I think ended up getting 3rd. Stuart Sutherland got 4th. Jose Calderon, another 212 guy, so same division as Derek. I think he got 2nd or 3rd last year. I can't really remember. He got 5th, and then forgot this guy. Not really a newcomer. I think his name starts with the W. Anyway, he looked really good. There are some other guys that we're not really going to see today, like Quentin Araya, who had some hype. But essentially, this is how they were here in prejudging. This is how they finished. But everyone has obviously their strengths and weaknesses. Size-wise, are all pretty comparable. But we'll go through it and then we'll break down the pose a little bit more. So from here, I would say, Nick is usually he's always on. He's just always on conditioning. Tonio usually has razor sharp conditioning. They all have coming on. It's just like you're saying, some people just have that muscle maturity and that density that just rock hard. Martin doesn't have a lot of muscle maturity. He's very soft. It's almost like a baby, like a baby's skin and muscle. But
what do you think contributes to muscle maturity? Is it your ability to get leaner and bring that out, or is it the development of muscle mass overall?
That is such a good question. I think muscle that you gain quickly is more likely to look less mature than muscle built that you have over time. Some people argue the way you train, right? Just hard, heavy weights creates that grainy hardness. I would venture to say a lot of it has to do with maybe the amount of glycogen or water retention that you have within the mussos, even subcutaneous, so under the skin. That's a good question, man. And I would say, if you have an idea or a guess too, it'd be pretty good. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the more muscle you have, is going to lend towards how hard it actually is. But then you need to be peaked right. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to conditioning and how dry you get.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
based on
saying?
that, I mean, I think so too. Like, I think a softer look would
Yeah.
warrant water retention. You know what I mean? Or but like if you come in lean, like you're lean, like you can't get around being lean enough. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I guess filling out properly with good carbohydrates, dry carbohydrates versus like
Hmm.
other things, even fiber would distend your stomach. I don't know. I would say
Yeah.
it's just crazy. It's just it's just an interesting thought, that term muscle maturity. But yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah, and for you, more of a lifestyle coach, like you look at the nutrition and the water intake, and then you know, as an actual bodybuilder, then you got to add the layer of anabolics on top. So, what anabolics, what drying agents are you going to use, and stuff
See,
like
dude,
that?
like that's where the general pop. So all right. So so I've made some videos reacting to like people who are enhanced like content. Usually I do a pretty good job of just attacking information. That's kind of what I'm about. I wouldn't say like very rarely will people purposefully put misinformation out there. Usually there is some good intention behind it. I mean, I guess if we're talking about the first episode, sometimes there's really bad intention
Yeah,
behind it. You know what I mean? But usually, when it comes to someone genuinely putting out information, there is some sort of good intention behind it. So I usually try to tag information. But being someone who is following is mostly naturals, general lifestyle coach, I do get the yeah, I'm not going to listen to that guy who takes steroids. Like I did a video on Sam Sulek, and it was just Sam Sulek talking about like calories, and I was just like,
yeah,
yo, I agree 100%. You could eat freaking donuts and still lose weight. Like that's freaking awesome. Like great.
yeah.
But a lot of the comments were like, yeah, I would never listen to a
Someone on
steroid
steroids.
head like Sam Sulek, or
Yeah,
and I'm just like, I hear you. I get your point, but like just because you take steroids doesn't mean that it's
yeah,
harder, or doesn't
yeah,
make it easier, or it's not like a cheat code. Sure, yes, they work, they build muscle. Awesome.
yeah,
Freaking great. But done right, these also make things a little more complex. Like you can peak a natural. Like I peaked, what is it, 3 competitors, and I have never stepped on stage before in my life. All we did
yeah,
was make sure that they were conditioned enough. We pulled water a little bit, which we really didn't even have to do. I was just
yeah.
doing it to make sure, and then we fed carbohydrates and made sure that we had enough to where they didn't spill over and look puffy.
Right.
Like that's peaking
Yeah,
in a
and like you
nutshell.
said, just
Really.
get them lean enough, and that's 90%, 99% of it. If they're lean, they're
Yes,
going to.
bro. Yes. So, but like then you add in the anabolics that cause water retention, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? You add in diuretics that may take away from that to help with that, but then you still have to have the diet on point so that they're healthy enough to step on stage. There's
Yeah,
some people who convulsively cramp on stage, which I have seen before, by the way, because they didn't do these things properly, and maybe
yeah,
they pulled sodium and water, which you probably shouldn't do because
yeah,
sodium helps add a fullness to the muscle. You see what I'm saying?
yeah.
It adds this layer of complexity that um nigga, I don't have to deal with. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you're right, dude. And
So,
and it even goes, I can just talk about some small points here. When growth hormones, for instance, introduced, you might have some people who most of the bodybuilding community who are cookie cutter will say, "Oh, you're going to cut out growth hormone 1 week, 2 weeks before, regardless, right? Because it makes you hold more water." But what you come to find is, depending on the athlete, some people look better with the growth hormone in, right, than some when you take it out. So what I will usually recommend, same thing when you would refeed or peak weeks, give someone a peak week. If you never worked with this athlete before, and even if you have, you should make sure you re-experiment. You don't just go all in on one peak week. This is what we're going to try. At least with my athletes, what I try and do, okay, refeeds are really important. I know we'll do a segment on this later, but refeeds are also an opportunity for you to see how much food someone can intake, how that food alters their look. Same thing with the growth hormone, right? In the middle of their prep, when they're a few weeks out, it might be smart to take the growth hormone out for a couple of days, see when they drop that water, how they look. If they just look super flat and stringy, whatever, you might want to put that growth hormone back in because it doesn't sacrifice their conditioning. Now, there's some people, you keep the growth hormone in and they just hold water like a water buffalo.
yeah.
So yeah, it adds another layer where it's not so cut and dry. You got to understand how each athlete works. But at the end of the day, I do think there are things that will contribute to a different look. And to your point, man, sometimes I would argue that being unnatural or on steroids is actually harder because you can push harder and further, right? I'm not saying a natural athlete can't get as lean. Of course they can, but you risk losing muscle tissue, right? And and your metabolism slowing. And when that happens, your hunger starts to slow down ish. You have your metabolism starts to slow down a little bit more. As an unnatural guy, your metabolism's always firing at 100. You introduce T3, T4, these different thyroid hormones, right? I don't think you should ever do that, right? You have clenbuterol on top of that. Then you're taking tren to help keep you anabolic. And so you're just able to diet harder and train even harder. It's almost like you can put your body through a little bit more if you mentally can do that. So there are plenty of people who take steroids and still don't put in the effort. They're just going to, come up short, right?
Yeah.
But I would argue that the people who have the work ethic, whether they're natural or enhanced, are still going to get to the same relative point, but the steroids allow them to push a little bit harder. I don't know if that point makes sense.
Yeah,
I just don't think that steroids are not an excuse for hard work. It's just these guys, even as naturals, would more than likely be a pro.
They're a code, but they're not necessarily just the cheat code.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so we're looking here at the back. This is, like you said.
Bro, I love these back shots. Wait,
yeah.
Pause.
Little grainy. I quality here, but.
You got to bring it up.
Okay. Is that better? What's the...
No, I actually don't see it at all.
Oh.
All
right, we got the back poses.
Oh man!
But I thought you meant bring up the quality. Anyway, now we're in 1080 or whatever it is over here instead of 720, so you'll be able to see it better here. But here are the back poses, man. Like you said, shows are one from the back. Some people got it, some people don't. But as you can see here, this is kind of where Nick takes the cake, man. He's just got these drilled out hamstrings, massive. He's just dense. Martin's holding it on size, but I would argue Nick has a little bit more thickness in the lower lats. Martin's a little bit more delt heavy. His arms, I mean, maybe he brings them up a little bit. I don't think he does. Yeah. He kind of keeps them there. I would argue he needs to bring up his elbows a little bit more. And there goes Nick.
Bro, that is crazy.
Yeah. As you see, Stuart Sutherland, Beef Stew, definitely needs to bring up his lower lats. Lower lats are just a big, big piece. Obviously, the lats are just one whole muscle. It's kind of like, the pec. Are you somebody who thinks that you can isolate the upper pectorals versus the middle and the lower, or is it all in a muscle?
Yeah. Emphasize, not I wouldn't say fully isolate, but emphasize.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly. So when we talk about this, just for the audience, we're not saying that there's a lower lat and then there's an upper lat. Exactly what you're saying, right? You can. The fibers are all individual at the end of the day, and the ones that get worked are the ones that are going to be stimulated to grow. So that's why I specifically told you, a lot of these athletes will be missing these lower parts of their lats, or they won't be as dense. Yes, because of genetics, and maybe it's because of posing, but also that full range of motion, that stretch, especially when it comes to lats, they're very intricate. Mm-hmm. This is also a place where you can see people's conditioning really well, especially in the glutes and then the lower back, right? That dryness.
I will say though, about like isolating, you can isolate or emphasize the strand itself, but you can't isolate parts of the strand. Does that make sense? Yeah,
you can get that whole length.
Yeah, you can, like, your chest fibers run essentially almost horizontally. So you can isolate based on the range. Upper, yes, but you cannot isolate like inner.
Actually, can you talk about that? Just, I think that's a big point. A lot of people do like these, what are they called?
Like a crush press or a plate press, or like
can you build the inner pec? I mean, because it originates here and inserts here, right? It just So you can't. You're essentially saying you can't just build this part of the chest.
You cannot isolate a specific part of the strand, but you can emphasize the strand itself, the muscle fibers itself. If that makes sense.
And that's I think
but like that's where people get confused with like feeling. Like a lot of people talk about feeling the mind muscle connection, feeling the muscle, and like sure, like you need to have a good connection and a good idea of what a muscle feels like, but just because it feels a certain way doesn't mean you're getting the most out of that way that you're doing it. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I've been seeing a little recently this past week in content, people actually talking about that. It's so great to see the science change, with like, oh, you can only digest 20 grams of protein a day. Now you can digest whatever you want. Oh, it's all about volume. Oh no, it's actually about mechanical tension and recoverable volume. And like you're saying, now it's like, oh, as long as you feel my muscle connection. No, that's not the only thing. So it's actually interesting. I really like it. And I think that's where you and I, it's a constant battle, constant fight to put good information out there, and also realizing information changes. You can be wrong. you're just trying to do it the best you can now. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's definitely something that I noticed that people are starting to change now. Is like, it's not just about what you feel. Like, feeling can be deceptive.
Yeah.
So we won't go over all the poses here, but let me bring up the screen for you.
Them hamstrings though, bro. That's crazy, man. Nick Walker's hamstrings.
Yeah, and I'll just let this play while we're doing this. Let's see. So bring up the side chest. So this is another pose where, well, we'll get the ad anyway. Well, this ad's going. This is another pose where Nick really excels.
Hey, bro, we're giving people free ads. We better. I'm just kidding.
So here we go. They're getting into it. Boom. Okay. So this is where Nick just looks insane to me. Like, his just arms. I've seen him in person, dude. His arms are just fucking massive, right? But he's got the side leg width, the thickness. I mean, everybody looks great. Everybody looks amazing. But I mean, it's just Nick Walker all day. Again, my opinion, he only really loses the front poses because of his structure. But again, this is a confirmation round, I'm pretty sure, which is where they do the top 4. Another back shot, the back lats.
Bro, stop it right there. I don't like this pose, bro. I don't like how a lot of people do this pose.
The pose itself, or how people do it?
I think it's how people do it. But obviously, I'm not straight up bodybuilder, so I'm not really sure. But I feel like a lot of people. I mean, what do you think? Like, I feel like a lot of people concave a little too much and create this like roundedness. Nick Walker seems to be going more out versus concaving a little more. Old dude on the far right seems to be doing the same thing, but he's a little concave. I don't know, man. Like, are you supposed? Obviously, it's to show your width, right?
So it's funny, because I think the back lat spread is the most deceptive pose, because people who have no back or really shitty backs can have a great back lat spread
because of the width.
Yes, because of the shoulder width and the detail. Like, Martin has a great back, but there's just no detail, right? And obviously how he's hitting it. Tonio has a great back. Nick does. So these are kind of poorer examples. They all have pretty decent backs. But the lat spread, exactly. It's like, how can you spread it? And then exactly what you're saying. So if you concave your shoulders and bring them more in towards you, you're going to create more of that turtle back, but it's going to get some detail out. But you also don't want to flex back and down, because then you're creating a more narrow silhouette, but you're getting a little bit more detail. Right. So, I'm not again, I love that you brought that up, because it's something I think too. It's just not the most impressive pose for me. It's just anybody with a back and some muscle can look decent in a back lat spread. But let's see, we'll go to most muscular here. This is one of my more favorite poses. I'll bring it up.
Disclaimer: I am not a bodybuilder. I mean, I'm now currently building my body, but
it's important for you to share your opinion, though, because
I think so.
99% of people in fitness, they don't know anything about bodybuilding, and this is essentially, what it's all about. So most muscular, this is really where you show just all your muscle, right? You could pose however you want. You have the crab pose that it's called, that Antonio Burton here. This is a little bit more classic of a most muscular. This is more of a generic most muscular here. Sometimes they'll put both hands on their quads, but it's essentially where you show how big you actually are. And that's usually the last pose. Here we go with an ab and thigh too. This is another place you see Nick's midsection, but then when he crunches down, it's a little bit more manageable for him, right?
That's crazy development. I mean, even the two on the left.
So we'll wait to see. Martin's qualified for the Olympia. He won not the Pittsburgh Pro, sorry, won the Detroit Pro 2 or 3 weeks ago. Nick is now qualified. He won the New York Pro. We'll wait for Beef Stew and Antonio Burton to see if they do that. But that's essentially the cap of the New York Pro, Sky. A lot of information there, probably some new, probably some old. But it once you really start to break down the physiques, it is subjective. There are times where I'm completely wrong on who wins, and sometimes I nail it. But it comes down at the end of the day to what it is that you got to separate what you like and what the judges are actually looking for.
Yeah. I mean, as I start practicing posing, I mean, I'm gonna bring my freaking pictures once I'm confident enough. You know, once I reach that level, I'm like, all right, Ian, like let's critique my shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna bring them on here. So,
and let me interrupt you real quick. Sorry, this is just a point that I want to make for everybody who hasn't competed before. Not only you, I'm going to be speaking to you, but for everybody else. Take as many freaking pictures and videos as you can, even if you don't look great or you don't look crazy. I can't tell you how many times I wish I could do certain befores and afters or look at certain points. I've been really good at documenting my progress, but man, you're going to wish you had more. You're going to wish you had more.
Yeah. Whenever I was a little chubs, I wish I had more pictures when I was a little chubs, bro. It would make for some epic content. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. It is good for the content because wink, wink, you know, sometimes you can use that old you know, to post some new content.
Yeah, you're not lying. You have to disclaim it, though, but I get you.
That's why I need to get fat and overweight just one time so I can just start doing some crazy.
Bro, do it one time. Remember that thing? Do it one time, bro.
Oh, man. So we'll call it here, guys. That was an overview of the Pittsburgh Pro, New York Pro. It was great to go over that with you, and we'll continue to go over some more bodybuilding shows and events in the future so you guys can get a taste leading up to the Mr. Olympia.
Absolutely.
Sky, any last words?
Nah, man. I mean, honestly, this is I said nah, but then said yeah. You know.
Yeah.
You so keep them on their toes. I think it's interesting, bro. Like, it is interesting to see the top level competitors and how they do things. Of course, I don't look at this and compare myself and be like, yo, I need to do that or I need to do this, but you can always take little golden nuggets from virtually anybody if they have the right knowledge for it. So
absolutely.
I guess, I mean, we'll see. I mean, honestly, we're going to keep talking about this. I'm interested in it especially as I go into this venture myself. So
yeah. And we can even go over divisions that you want to do. If this was just open bodybuilding, we can go over classic, men's physique, whatever, man. And I think, you know, just like whether it's business or sports, you want to pick the people who you want to emulate and kind of form your physique or your presentation around them. And I think that's a really good strategy too. So you picking a bodybuilder that you really like is going to be really important.
Well, this is the news, man, and this is also a podcast, so we can literally do whatever we want.
Do whatever we want.
So,
all right, bro.
Right, close it.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode. Again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this podcast with your friends. We're always trying to cover the best bodybuilding news and the best topics to share with you so you can upgrade and level up your physique. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the only show that not only gives you the bodybuilding news, but teaches you how to build a better body.
You'll get it, bro.
Oh, that's funny. I know.